Hey, all you cool cats and kittens, it's Miss Ellis, and I'm here to talk to you today about phylum Nematoda, or the roundworms. Some of these you're going to be familiar with, some of them not so much. Roundworms. If you've ever had to take a puppy, well, when you get a puppy and you take it to the vet, you have to get it dewormed. Typically, it's the roundworms that we're trying to get rid of. So just some general characteristics. You don't need to jot these down because we kind of did this with the pre-lesson information. Remember, roundworms are pseudocoelomates. They have what's called a false body cavity. The only thing that maintains their shape is the pressure of the fluid inside pressing on their body walls, and so that's that hydrostatic skeleton. And we say it's a pseudocoelomate or false body cavity because if that fluid somehow leaves, then the worm's body will deflate and it no longer maintains its shape. Roundworms are unsegmented, okay? So they're smooth, they're tapered on both ends, which means they kind of get skinny, like skinny jeans. This does not include earthworms. Earthworms are segmented; they get their own phylum. This is the first phylum of animals that we've studied that has a true digestive tract with two openings. Food enters the mouth and exits and waste exits via the anus. It's the first phylum with a complete gut or digestive tract. So we say that food flows in one direction. Now, in a gastrovascular cavity, it would be two. It's in and out the same opening. This is one direction. The majority of roundworms are free-living. They're hunters, but they're boring. And so we're going to talk about the parasitic roundworms. There are approximately 50 species that can parasitize plants or animals. And of those, approximately 14 can infect humans. We're not going to talk about all 14, just kind of like the notorious ones, I guess. So we're going to start with the condition of trichinosis. Trichinosis is a disease or condition that is caused by the roundworm Trichinella spiralis. These worms range in size. Males can be 1.5 millimeters and females about twice as big, 3 millimeters. Now think about how big a millimeter actually is. So these guys are really, really tiny. How does one get Trichinella spiralis? Well, eating raw or undercooked beef or pork from contaminated animals. Symptoms include in the first couple days some, gastrointestinal issues, nausea, diarrhea, vomiting, abdominal pain, and then for 2 to 8 weeks, if this persists, and it can lead to muscle pain, face swelling, fatigue, headache, chills, rash, coughing, diarrhea, constipation. So it's going to give you some stomach issues, if you will. The larva will form cysts and become inactive in the host's muscles, much like a tapeworm kind of spreads. And if you don't cook your meat to proper temperatures in order to destroy those cysts, then they can hatch in your stomach upon ingestion. Elephantiasis is another condition that is caused by a small group of worms. I'm going to play this video real quick. This is a little hard to look at. I'm just going to give you a heads up on the front end. I said play. Thank you.
Lymphatic filariasis, more commonly known as elephantiasis, afflicts many of the world's most vulnerable communities. A parasite that infects the human lymphatic system is responsible for the condition, which causes swelling and deformity of the limbs and other body parts. Mosquitoes spread the tiny parasitic worm that causes elephantiasis from person to person. The disease is endemic in 83 tropical countries, and Professor David Molyneux of Britain's Liverpool School of Tropical Medicine says anyone living in those places is at risk.
The total numbers of people which have been estimated by the World Health Organization to be at risk in these 83 countries is about 1.3 billion people. So let's say a fifth of the planet is at risk.
There are few conditions in the world more socially alienating. The Global Alliance to Eliminate Lymphatic Filariasis has been at the forefront of those fighting the disease. As the group's video shows, elephantiasis mainly affects the rural poor, forcing infected people like this man from Uganda further into poverty.
Inanisumbua kama nitasimama muda mrefu bila kukaa chini kama saa 5 au 6.
Washing infected limbs can help ease the suffering, but it does not cure or stop the spread of the condition. This man comes from a village in Tanzania where elephantiasis is endemic. Set up 9 years ago, the Global Alliance aims to eradicate elephantiasis as a public health threat by 2020. The group has teamed up with the UN World Health Organization and major drug companies such as GlaxoSmithKline and Merck. Andy Wright heads up GlaxoSmithKline's elephantiasis program.
When the program started, there was a global plan produced by the WHO for how you could achieve this goal within 20 years. And progress against that plan is very much on target. So there's a lot of very strong evidence that the program is succeeding and a lot of confidence that in the vast majority of the countries it will be successful before 2020.
The eradication program consists of 2 drugs, albendazole, donated by GlaxoSmithKline, and mectizan, donated by Merck. Those living in endemic areas take 2 pills a year for 5 years. The drugs significantly reduce the number of worm larvae in the blood, which means far fewer mosquitoes carry the infection to those they bite.
We made an agreement with the World Health Organization to donate one of our antiparasitic drugs, albendazole, to every country that needs it until the disease is eliminated. And that's an enormous commitment that'll take 20 years or more and will involve billions of our antiparasitic albendazole.
Despite these efforts, there is much more to do in the fight to eradicate lymphatic filariasis. Populous countries such as Nigeria and Indonesia and others face logistical problems in delivering and implementing the program nationwide. Professor Molyneux says it should be viewed as the most important public health program of our generation.
If we can't afford to implement that intervention within existing health financing environments, I don't believe we could afford to do anything in public health.
Elephantiasis was once considered one of the world's most neglected afflictions, but those fighting it hope that by 2020 the disease will be gone. Rachel Smalley, VOA News, London.
Okay, so I mean, it's just really terrible. Let's talk about how this works, or how a person can contract filarial worms. So the organism that causes elephantiasis there's a group of worms called filarial worms. They range in size from 18 millimeters to 49. Again, females typically tend to be larger. The route of infection is they're spread through what's called a vector, which is an organism that can transfer diseases and organisms from one to another. And the vector is the mosquito. And so then once the mosquito bites a person that has them, they're so small that they can fit up the mosquito's mouth parts, and then it can transfer it to another person. And then these worms will travel to the lymph vessels. Symptoms, as you can see, are severe swelling in infected areas. The worms interfere with the proper functioning of the lymph system. So your lymph system normally takes off excess fluid, and they can no longer do that because they are, blocked by these worms. They're typically found in tropical regions of Asia, Africa, and South America. And the large numbers of worms will block the passage of fluids, which results in the swelling of infected parts. And they tend to be in the lower limbs because of gravity. Gravity is going to draw that fluid down, and they tend to be in the lower extremities of a person's body. Ascariasis is the next disease. This is caused by an organism called Ascaris lumbricoides. These are much larger worms. Males and females are about 35 centimeters. So these are visible with the naked eye, and they're significantly larger. How does one get Ascaris lumbricoides to cause ascariasis? Well, eggs will be in feces, and then feces can be deposited near a garden or a field. And if you're working in the soil, you're gardening, you have your hands in the dirt, your hands and fingers can be contaminated with dirt. And then if you touch your mouth for some reason, you can also possibly get them by consuming vegetables or fruits that haven't been carefully washed, peeled, or cooked. And symptoms include, well, there's little to none at first, possible abdominal pain, but if they build up, you can have intestinal blockage, which means you can't poo, and of course that can be terrible. Sometimes people develop a cough because of the way the worms can migrate through the body. I'm going to show you this short video clip about the worm. This is Monsters Inside Me, so they like to be a little dramatic.
Ascaris lumbricoides is a parasitic roundworm that infects the human intestine. Ascaris is the largest roundworm a human can get. They can grow up to 16 inches long.
Inside the small intestine, the Ascaris parasite gorges itself on pre-digested food, stealing nutrients from its host. The worms reach maturity, breed, and continue feeding inside the host's intestines. But the Ascaris worm is not a benign invader. It can cause fatal complications.
If multiple Ascaris worms migrate to the wrong part of the body, like the colon, they can cause a blockage that turns deadly for the host.
Ascaris lumbricoides parasites begin as free-living eggs in the soil. If the eggs are ingested by a human host, they travel to the intestines, where they feed, mate, and lay eggs. When the parasitic eggs are passed out in the host's feces, the life cycle is complete.
It is estimated that this parasite infects over a quarter of the world's population right now. In some parts of Africa, almost 95% of people are infected.
In the U.S., Ascaris infection is rare. But one of the ways the parasite can enter the country is as a stowaway inside a living host.
Okay, so again, they're overly dramatic, but still it was a good visual and some explanation. Okay, next we have hookworm infection. Hookworm is the common name for the Necator americanus worm. These guys are small. They range in size from 5 to 11 millimeters. How would you get a hookworm? Again, eggs in the feces deposited near a garden or field, grow in the soil. In this case, the larva can penetrate the human skin. So what happens if you're walking around barefoot on contaminated soil? It's possible for the hookworm to burrow into your bare foot. Symptoms include anemia and protein deficiency due to blood loss. Again, another Monsters Inside Me, just to explain a little bit better.
Hookworms are blood-sucking intestinal parasites that have jagged teeth they use to hook onto the flesh.
There are many types of hookworms, each specialized for a different host. But if Missy has contracted a human hookworm, she could be in danger. When a human hookworm infects the skin, the worm excretes an enzyme that breaks apart skin cells, allowing it to burrow freely through thick layers of skin. From there, the worm enters the bloodstream and travels through the body to the intestine, where it hooks into intestinal tissue and gorges itself on blood. But if a hookworm reaches the vital organs, such as the heart or the lungs, it can cause severe anemia, malnutrition, and even heart failure.
Some species of hookworms specialize on human hosts. Others feed on mammals like dogs or cats.
But it's not unknown for a cat hookworm to infect a human host. when a mammal such as a cat steps on soil contaminated with hookworm larvae. The parasites burrow into the cat through its feet. From there, they migrate through the cat's body, latching onto the small intestine, where they feed on blood. The parasite's eggs are passed in the cat's feces and deposited into the soil, where they hatch into larvae. When an uninfected cat walks on contaminated soil, the life cycle continues. There are up to 30,000 cases of hookworm infection in the U.S. each year. And even the cleanest domestic animals can carry the parasite. The best way to avoid contracting hookworm is to avoid walking barefoot on contaminated soil and ensure domestic pets are dewormed regularly by a veterinarian.
Hookworm infection is one of the most widespread parasitic diseases in the world. It affects an estimated 1.5 billion people worldwide.
So, moral of the story, don't walk around barefoot. All right, we're almost done. Pinworms. Pinworms are very common. Pinworm infection is caused by a little worm called the Enterobius vermicularis. Again, very small, males about 3 millimeters, females about 11 millimeters. They're most common in children. In fact, you may have had them when you were little, or you know someone who did. What happens is the eggs will contaminate hands, clothing, bedding, toys, toilet seats, etc. Often you see outbreaks, if you will, in daycare centers. And then, of course, we're not just adults, but children especially put everything in their mouths. It's one of the ways they kind of sense things when kids or toddlers are little. And so then those eggs are going to go into the mouth as well. Symptoms. Basically, they have an itchy anal region because the eggs tend to pass out that area at night, and so you can get kind of itchy. Finally, we have heartworms in dogs. I did want to include heartworms because a lot of us have pets, and it's very important to give your dogs heartworm medicine. The worm is the Dirofilaria imitatus. These are rather large. They can be 13 centimeters to 30 centimeters. That's an actual picture of heartworms in a heart that kind of looks like a big mass of spaghetti. It's kind of gross, but that's what they look like. The route of infection, again, these are also spread via mosquito bites. So a mosquito can bite a dog that possibly has heartworms, pick up the larva, and then go to another dog and spread it. Symptoms include a mild but persistent cough. The dog's going to appear lethargic, decreased appetite, possibly weight loss. As the heartworm disease progresses, they can maybe develop blockages of flow to the blood with the heart, which of course is life-threatening. And few dogs are going to survive that. So definitely give your dogs heartworm medicine. Okay, that's the end. I know it was a lot, but those are the diseases caused by roundworms that I wanted to talk about. Oh no,